weren't born yet when your dad was doing some of the things he was doing at Termite Terrace and all of that. But you were around for Beanie and Cecil, and they actually named one of the characters. He named one of the characters in Beanie and Cecil after your baby Ruth. And he used your giggle in the cartoon. So can you remember a little bit about what happened, or did you remember being recorded or any of that?
No, I think the reason I giggled was I wasn't talking yet. But I definitely, Beanie and Cecil was a very vivid experience when I was very young, because at that time the show was very popular and our house was filled with Beanie and Cecil toys, and we got to paint Beanie and Cecil cells, and of course I was Beanie's girlfriend, baby Ruthie, so that was pretty cool. But my mom was involved making the cartoons with him. She produced for him, and they would write songs together. My brother did voices, and so it was really a family experience. And it's really cool now because I've been going through Dad's archives, and I found the original art from the episode that was done and where Dad had brought all the artists to our house. And so it's about building a swimming pool in the backyard, which was based on our real life experience. And so our house, the front of the house on this background, is perfectly rendered down to every window. And the inside shots, it's the 60s lamp and the couch, and it's just, it's so cool because he really integrated his life and his art in a very unique way. I mean, our backyard swimming pool had the characters painted all around the outside edge. And we had,
real life?
Yeah, in real life.
Oh my gosh.
And we had, when they laid the cement, he had us all do our handprints and footprints like Grauman's Chinese Theater. So it was just cool. I mean, it was like living in a cartoon.
Well, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
And can you, do you remember asking him about his earlier career, like as a kid, or was that because there was something I was going to ask you about that I read where he had had a near, a scare later in his life, and he actually recorded his life, and that you have listened to it. So what did you learn things back then about what he was doing, or what later on struck you about what you heard about him?
I think it's really interesting because he very much lived in the moment. And so he wasn't somebody who talked a lot about the old days. He was always kind of thinking about what he wanted to do next and what was happening right then. I remember when I was in college and living at home, music videos had first become really popular, and so I was watching them a lot. And then he would sit down with me and we would talk about ways to incorporate animation with some of the videos and some of the characters, and he got very excited about that, and we actually wrote down ideas. So I really, other than the fact that, I would spend a lot of time at his studio, and the entire time I grew up until really we had that building until just a few years ago, we'd go over after school, and it was filled with just the coolest stuff in his office from his whole history, Looney Tunes, through Beanie and Cecil and other projects he worked on. So of course, I was drawn to all of that, but it wasn't something he talked about a lot. It was really more of an exploration I did after he passed away.
And I know that he was close friends with Carl Stalling.
Yeah, he was very close.
And that your family has his baton.
Yes.
That was given to your dad.
Yeah.
What other really cool kind of memorabilia do you have from his career? I know you have a ton of beautiful art from his life, but what kinds of...
I think to me what's so interesting about his archives is he was just the consummate fanboy. He just loved the art, and he loved other artists' art. So he would trade with people. I mean, we have Gertie the dinosaur drawings, and we have an oil painting that Ising did of Bosco. And just, like a lot of really things, we had, matter of fact, we found this Disney poster, and I guess it was the first poster when they started doing Mickey Mouse dolls. And I guess books, and I guess that the guy that was head of the Disney archives found out he had it, and it was the only one in existence. And so he offered my dad lifetime entrance to the parks, to give up that poster, and he didn't want to give it up. I mean, I'm like, hello. So
Thanks, Dad.
We got to Disneyland plenty of times, but he loved to go to Disneyland. So I just think and then, he saved his employee card and, just things that you wouldn't think people would think, but the whole experience was so meaningful to him, that he just, we have letterheads from all the different places he worked at and just stuff, because he just cared about it so much and he connected to it emotionally, I think.
You mentioned the dolls. Your dad has something to do with Mickey dolls.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story when you think about it. I mean, of course, he grew up around LA, but she wasn't technically his aunt, but she was called Aunt Charlotte, and she was a doll designer. And so she came to him. He'd been an artist like Chuck from an early age, drawing. He actually, when he was 12, he won the LA Times Junior Cartoonist Award, and he had a scholarship to Schnard Art Institute. He would go on Saturdays and be taught art for several years. As a kid. And so she came to him and said, do you have any ideas? And he goes, well, I just saw this really cool cartoon called Steamboat Willie with this character called Mickey Mouse. And, it's brand new. He thinks, I think that'd be really cool. So she says, well, give me some drawings. And he goes around, he can't find anything. Can you imagine? Nothing of Mickey Mouse. So he goes and sits through a few times of it and does drawings and brings it to her. And she mocks up the doll, and they're making plans. And his father comes in and goes, you can't just, sell this stuff. I mean, you got to go talk to the guy that did this. So they go, he drives them over to talk to Walt. He's in a little storefront. And he's like, that's so great. That was the first Disney merchandise. So he set Charlotte and my dad up in a house. He would come over after school, and Dad operated the machine that brushed the stuffing off the dolls. And these, so these dolls were made. And then Dad was meanwhile putting his portfolio together. And when he finally got the courage, when he was 17, he showed his work to Walt. He said, what I really want is to work at your studio. And so he said to him, you know what, I've got a job for you, but we're in the process of moving, so come back to me in 2 months. Well, Dad was so jazzed and so excited that he went to Leon Schlesinger, and Leon gave him a job that day, and that's how he ended up there instead at Disney, which I think everyone that knows his work knows that was his destiny. So, but sadly about the dolls, and I think some of his early artwork, it was stored in a garage in Glendale that flooded. Mm-hmm. And so he lost the dolls in that artwork.
So you don't have any dolls?
We don't have any dolls.
Wow.
I was at the Disney, if you guys haven't been in San Francisco, the Disney Family Museum, it's incredible. And they had one of the dolls there, and I'm like, oh, wow. We have photographs of Walt with the dolls. And my dad even has a story of having to push Walt down the street in his car to get it started one day. I mean, these were the early days. But we don't have the doll, but we have that story. It's pretty good.
That's a great story.